Hi, my name is Adante Aquino, and this is my family tree presentation for motor behavior. To begin, I'd first like to start with the theories that I'm going to relate my information back to throughout the PowerPoint, which are the ecological theory, which is a theory in which the individual acts on the environment based on affordances presented, as well as the dynamic systems theory, which is a theory where the movement of the individual is influenced by the individual themselves, the task, as well as the environment. Throughout the presentation, I will be covering areas of motor behavior such as height, weight, aging process, location of upbringing, sport involvement, educational influence, career influence, as well as medical complications and how they are linked to me through my family tree as far back as my great-grandparents. Starting off with height, my height of 6 feet is fairly uncommon for a person of Filipino descent, and I feel like this is a result of two factors: genetics and affordances that were provided to me through nutrition and the environment that I was raised in. In terms of family influence, my great-grandfather, Adante Aquino, was fairly tall at around 5'10". The height skipped over my grandpa and left my father at a height of 6 feet. In addition, when looking at the aspect of nutrition, my father's family was fairly well off in the Philippines, which could have led to proper nutrition that may have fostered more favorable conditions for growth. Next, moving on to weight, my figure is fairly slim, and I attribute this to my genetics mostly on my mother's side of the family. When looking at my mother's side of the family, my great-grandfather, Felix Pasamba, as well as my grandpa, pictured here on this slide, Rogelio Pasamba, were fairly thin, which I feel contribute to my slimmer build. Moving forward with the aging process, I feel that aging is most likely related to cultural influence in addition to genetics. Also, personally, I feel that aging also has a link to the environment that I was brought up in the sense that growing up, I was not out working in the sun, which may have protected me from the UV radiation that results in faster aging. In terms of connection to family, all of my family members have seemed to age fairly well, which leads me to believe that I have a fair chance of aging well also. For example, pictured on the slide, here's a photo of my grandpa, Rolando Aquino, in his mid-20s. Continuing on with the location of upbringing, I feel that the location in which I was raised, Diamond Bar, California to be exact, was determined by the affordances that it provided in terms of upbringing, where the city had a good school district and the neighborhood was fairly safe. In a bigger picture view connected to my family, both of my parents were born in the Philippines but came to America in the 1970s and were both raised here. This move to America by my grandparents on both sides of my family was made in order to provide a more opportunity-rich environment for my parents and the generations that came after them. Next, with my involvement in sports, I feel like this was most likely due to the environment that I was brought up in, as well as influence from my dad. When looking at family history, my great-grandparents and my grandparents were not involved in sports, but my father, who was raised in the United States, was involved in sports such as baseball and football. Although I did try baseball and soccer growing up, I never had the desire to stick with sports, even though my parents provided me an environment where playing sports was an option I could pursue if I chose to. After moving from team sports, I decided that I wanted to skateboard since my dad had told me that he had skateboarded as a child as well. Seen in the photo provided on the slide is an image of me in my first team sport, which was t-ball. Moving to educational influence, I feel like this was heavily related to culture and upbringing, which is one of the main reasons why I am pursuing higher education. In Asian culture, education serves as somewhat of a socio-cultural environmental constraint, which is that we are expected to pursue higher education in hopes of securing a well-paying job. Going back to the family connection, all the way back to my great-grandparents, almost all of them pursued higher education and went to college. This led me to pursue higher education, not only to follow in their footsteps in terms of education, but also to provide for myself and any possible family that I may have in the future. Pictured on the slide above is a photo of my grandma at the Psychological Association of the Philippines in 1970. Next, moving forward with jobs and professional choices. This links similarly with educational influence in the sense that there's a socio-cultural environmental factor when in regards to Asian culture and professions, where it's expected that you go to college in an attempt to secure a high-paying job in the STEM-related fields. When looking back at my family history, both of my parents are in the medical field, and my grandparents and great-grandparents were either professors, accountants, or engineers, which results in me feeling a certain need to pursue a career in the medical field, which results in some sort of pressure. Lastly, with medical or physical problems, I feel that unmodifiable risk factors like race and genetics are going to be a large factor in my future health. For example, Filipino cuisine is actually known to be fairly unhealthy, which is connected to my race. And on both sides of my family, my grandparents have high blood pressure or diabetes, in addition to my father having diabetes. In order to combat this, I will have to focus on modifiable risk factors such as nutrition and lifestyle in order to combat these common health problems that run in my family. To conclude this presentation, I'd like to end with the idea that many factors, such as genetics, sociocultural, environmental pressures, and passed down ideals help shape my motor behavior on a day-to-day basis as well as throughout my lifetime. Thank you.